Class, and welcome to Chapter 7. This is on the geography of life. This chapter is really interesting because it takes you through all the different biomes of the earth, and it's kind of a lengthy chapter. So as I go through it, I would encourage you guys to pause it and read this a little more and study it on your own. But we'll go through all the terrestrial biomes, the communities of similar organisms in a particular climate. So that's what a terrestrial biome is, a community of similar organisms in a particular climate. It's determined by atmosphere and climate, specifically temperature and precipitation. And we group them into three climatic zones, the tropical zone, the temperate zone, and the polar zone. So here's a look at desert cacti in different parts of the world. And how they look the same because these are plants that are specifically designed for hot, dry weather. This is a great video looking at the different biomes, and I'd encourage you to watch that. Just download the PowerPoint and you can watch this one on your own. So these are the different biomes and how they are dispersed throughout the world, and you can see them labeled here. You'll see a lot of the warmer biomes towards the equator, and then the cold, wet biomes further away from the equator. The tropical zone is the equator to 25 degrees north and south. Of that, in latitude, the temperate zone falls between 25 and 60 degrees north and south latitude, and the polar zone is even further north, above 60 degrees. The biome distributions vary within broad climatic zones. The proximity to water will always affect climate. The continental climate has daily seasonal temperature varies widely. In the interior, that's farther from large bodies of water. And a maritime climate has less variation in temperature because it's near oceans and large lakes. That helps to keep the temperature more consistent. So this is a look at the different biomes. And again, they're all grouped for their precipitation and temperature. So the desert would have pretty much would be around here with the highest temperature. The higher temperature is on the left side on the bottom. So desert is hot and dry. We go up to tropical rainforest, which is hot and very wet, all the way down to the tundra, which is extremely cold and extremely dry. These are graphs. It's a climatograph key, and they are shown for different parts in the world to give you an example of the different biomes pictured. And a climatograph always shows the months of the year on the x-axis at the bottom, and then it shows the average precipitation in blue bar graphs with the average temperature in the red line. The temperature will be on the right side of the graph, and the average precipitation will be on the left side of the graph. So this shows you how average precipitation and temperature vary throughout the months of the year in each of the biomes. And with these, I'm going to go through these slides rather quickly because they're all on describing the different biomes. So here's the tropical rainforest, plentiful rainfall, warm climate, up to 80 inches of rain a year, extreme, enormous plant and animal diversity. So examples of this would be places in the Amazon jungle, like here in Peru. And again, this climatograph, you can see how the average temperatures are very high, precipitations are very high, and they're fairly consistent throughout the year. Here's just a look at how different animals occupy different levels of the canopy layer, so different levels of the trees, and how different animals will live in different layers or parts of the understory or tree cover. Tropical season forest, the annual rainfall is slightly less. There's a wet and dry season. It ranges from tall tree canopy in the wettest extreme to scrubby woodlands in the driest. An example of this is in Venezuela. And again, you can see the climatograph, extremely high temperature, but you have there's a wet and a dry season. There's more months with lots of rainfall and less months with less. And here's a typical animal in that biome. The tropical savanna is dominated by grasses. Rainfall is highly seasonable. The drought persists for more than half of the year. The climate overlaps with the seasonal tropical forest. And an example here is in the African country of Botswana. You can see here the wet and dry season, more dry than wet, but extremely high temperatures. And here's Botswana, kind of typical what you would think of in like an African safari type picture. Temperate zone, over 60% of Earth's land mass is in the temperate zone. You can look at the annual precipitation, temperature ranges. It's dominated by deciduous forests, and the growing seasons range 4 to 10 months. Here are the temperate deciduous forests dominated by broadleaf trees. Deciduous means that it's able to lose its trees. There's moderate summers, cold winters. The growing seasons last between the last and first hard frosts, and little remains undisturbed. So here's an example in Massachusetts. You can see the climatograph about average precipitation throughout the year. It'll get cold in months, but then the precipitation just turns to snow. So here's a look in the fall, beautiful picture of a fall day on the East Coast. Temperate evergreen forest, dominant trees will keep their leaves like evergreen conifers. Less precipitation in warmer winters than temperate deciduous. The summer will be drier than winter, and some regions are temperate rainforests with mild temperatures year-round. And an example of this would be a scene from Portland, Oregon. Chaparral is dominated by summer drought, evergreen shrubland, and low woodlands, like a Mediterranean type climate. Stony leafed shrubs, which are the ability to adapt to resist water loss and wilting. They are also adapted to prevent fire. So an example of this is Santa Barbara, California. So really similar to what we would have here in Southern California. Summer drought, we are typical, clearly that's common in the Mediterranean type climate. A beautiful flower common to that climate. Temperate grasslands, 90% have been altered now by agriculture and cattle grazing. So these grasslands, when I say they've been altered, people have turned them into farmland or grazing for cattle. Winters are long and cold, the summers are hot, but it's wet enough still to not form deserts, but it's too dry for forests and larger trees to grow. So this is kind of the Midwestern central plains of the United States. And here's a picture of what Kansas looks like. Dominated by grass. And farmers will turn the wheat and hay into those barrels, which are shown there. And this is probably eastern Colorado, even, I bet. Polar biomes, they're above 60 degrees north, very cold, short growing seasons, limited abundance, diversity of life. The boreal forest is cold and wet. The growing season is less than 4 months. The winters are long, dry, and cold. The forests are dominated by conifers, which are trees with cones. And the permafrost is a layer of permanently frozen soil, about 30 to 100 centimeters below the surface. And here is a look at Canada. When we compare that, to the tundra is completely treeless, extremely dry. There's a layer of permafrost. The growing season is shorter than 3 months, and this is where winters will be the most harsh. So we're looking at places north of Canada, like Alaska, or on the same realm of Canada, but in the northern part. And here's what permafrost looks like. It's the layer under soil that will be always completely frozen. Deserts then occur worldwide, extremely arid and dry, below 250 millimeters of rainfall, wide variation in daily temperature. They can get really cold at night, but very hot into the day. And succulents will be the plants most adapted because they need little water. So here's Tucson, Arizona, and the desert cacti you would see. There would also be animals and different shrubs that would be associated with living in an extremely dry environment that could withstand very little rainfall. Another desert flower. And the desert mouse has the ability to drink hardly any water in its lifetime, and it gets its water just from eating. Mountains and coastlines are not biomes. They contain features found in all climatic zones. They have gradients of environmental change. Changes in elevation produce a variety of climates, and they're particularly vulnerable to human activities. So this is a look at some mountain ranges, and you can see different biomes in one mountain, kind of the tundra, the treeless landscape above tree line, the conifer level below that. Mountains may experience some climatic change as all of North America. The air temperature drops as the altitude increases. Mountains experience the same biotransitions in altitude as the continent does. Mountains may have different climate on either side, and we call this the rain shadow, where rain falls on mountain as the air climbs on the windward side, and the other side is called the leeward side, where the mountain is dry. So here is the windward slopes where the rain will fall, and the hot, dry air will descend on the dry side. So all the rain falls on the windward slopes, and on the leeward slopes, it's dry. And here's a look where the rain would fall on the windward slope of a mountain, and on the other side of the mountain range, it would be very dry because all the rain fell on the windward side. Coastlines occur in narrow transition of a terrestrial biome and an ocean. The saltwater and wave action create harsh environments on coastlines. So plants and animals have to be adaptable to a high salt, low freshwater environment. Human actions, especially pollution, have greatly led to significant damage in coastlines. Not many shrubs can withstand these harsh conditions, just mainly shrubs and a lot of sand. Aquatic biomes originate in the upper regions of a watershed. The streams will flow down the watershed and merge with other streams. Gravity pulls streams downhill. The speed of flow is determined by the gradient of land. We can have a year-round perennial stream and an intermediate stream that only flows at certain times. A channel is a stream's normal waterway, and the floodplain is the area surrounding the channel that periodically floods. So here's a look at the main channel, natural levees, and the floodplain. That would be the area where the channel could flood. The frequency of flooding will increase as you get closer to the channel. Stream ecosystems, lotic ecosystems, are ecosystems dominated by flowing fresh water. The food chain will be important here, where much of primary production enters as detritus, which are dead leaves, nutrient-rich soils, and there's remaining from algae here. So this is a look at a stream lotic ecosystem and some of the organisms that would survive there. The riparian zone and the hyporheic zone, I'll let you read through those on your own. The inland bodies of water that fill topographic basins have little or no directional flow. So these would be lakes or ponds. Lakes will be stream fed with a surface area greater than 5 hectares, and ponds are smaller than 5 hectares. And a hectare is just a measurement of land. The lake volume is determined by inflow and outflow. Open basins are drained by streamer water, and a closed basin has no outlet stream. The outflow is just through percolation through the ground and evaporation. A lentic describes an ecosystem associated with lakes or ponds, and lentic systems account for 0.01% of the Earth's water. Lentic ecosystems habitats will vary across lakes and depths. There are different zones in lakes that are described here, and I'll let you read through those, but you'll see when the aphotic zone, you'll get little or no sunlight down there, and the different zones are also shown here. And I'll let you guys kind of look at that just to see what sort of plants will survive. But you can see as we get further out, the photic zone is what light can still reach to, and the aphotic zone is what light will not reach to. Energy and nutrient cycling, phytoplankton are very important producer. Zooplankton is the diverse array of protists and animals that will feed on organic and phytoplankton. And filter feeders will feed on both phyto and zooplankton. So these are some pictures of different phytoplankton, zooplankton, some of the tiny organisms that make up the energy and nutrient food webs at the smallest level. The pool of nutrients will affect primary production. So organisms in the photic zone, when they die and sink, the nutrients will build in their sediments over time. Streams will bring other nutrients, and water mixing feeds the nutrients to the photic zone. Winds, seasonal circulation also help create these nutrients. The littoral zone is the shallow area close to the shore. It contains rooted vegetation, and it provides much of the primary production, and because of that, it will support a wide array of life. And you can see kind of some of the different animals that would be found in these bodies of water and what they feed on and what they need. Wetlands are ecosystems where the soil is saturated all year. The soil has little oxygen, so it's made of hydrophytes, which are plants adapted to anaerobic soil. That means without oxygen. Wetlands provide ecosystem services. They help store water because they're always saturated with water. They help in flood control. So if an area gets a lot of rain from a hurricane, that rain can go to the wetland and be stored there because the soil will help keep the water there. It does improve water quality by cleaning it, and it's a great habitat for fish and wildlife. Marshes are periodically or continuously flooded. They're dominated by herbaceous plants. They're usually influenced by the tides along seacoasts, or they can be non-tidal, occurring in floodplains and depressions. So those are marshes. Swamps are fed by flowing water dominated by shrubs or trees found in floodplains. The mangrove swamps along the seacoast can be tropical or subtropical. So this is what a swamp would look like. And here are some mangrove plants. Bogs are where the rainfall source, this is the water, the rainfall is the source of water. These are wetlands with peat deposits in their soil. So the soil is extremely low in nutrients, and plants will be adapted to low nitrogen and phosphorus nutrients. Fens then are wetlands fed by groundwater. They're dominated by grasses with patches of woody vegetation. The Florida Everglades are one of the Earth's largest fens, and that is shown here. Estuaries are partially enclosed bodies of water where fresh water meets ocean water. They are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. That is a test question, estuaries. They provide a lot of ecosystem services in fisheries, flood and storm surge protection, and sediment and nutrient absorption. Estuarine water flow, the net water movement from streams and rivers flows to the oceans. The flow is slow and complex, and the flushing time is just the time required for the estuary to completely recycle its contents from fresh water to salt water. Estuarine ecosystems, there's a wide variety of habitats there. It's one of the most productive systems on Earth. You'll have many fish and shellfish rely on estuaries for spawning and early development. Oceans then. The next several slides make up oceans. They cover 71% of the Earth's surface and contain 98% of the Earth's water. Extremely salt water. They'll circulate and disperse heat around the world, and then they are the most biologically diverse and abundant near the land. These are the different zones of the ocean ecosystems. The intertidal zone having to do with tides closest to the seacoast. So you'll get tidal pools filled with really fun creatures to explore. Divided into two provinces, the Necritic province and the Oceanic province, basically the area before the continental shelf and after the continental shelf. And you can see that here. Ocean ecosystems, more zones that are divided, the oceans. Organisms will display a wide variety of adaptations depending on what zone they're in order to obtain energy. And this is a bottom dweller. The ocean bottom is made up of coral reefs, very diverse, productive. They support huge levels of biodiversity. Thermal vents are a chemosynthetic type ecosystem. Here are kelp forests. Here's a look at the warm water coral reefs found around the world. Again, they support a huge, abundant variety of wildlife. And this is the end of the slideshow. Thank you for listening, guys, and I hope you're all doing well.